Eccoci qua. Due parole in Italian, and welcome back, Ahron Bregman. Thanks for your time. Ahron is joining us from London. Just came back to London, he told me. Due parole, allora faremo in inglese. Ahron Bregman credo che lo conoscete, è già stato su questo canale, è un political scientist, opera da professore in Inghilterra e ha un passato anche nell'esercito, nella IDF, EDF, Israeli Defense Force, e in particolare i testi più noti di Ahron hanno a che fare con la vecchia invasione o occupazione o guerra israelo-libanese all'inizio degli anni '80, quindi un episodio di 40 anni fa, quando Ahron was somewhat younger than he is now, and I was somewhat younger. I think we're about the same age. And given that the topic is becoming of extreme relevance, let me start by asking Ahron, after thanking him again for his kindness, what do you think? Are we going to see another war? Who's going to start it? What's going to happen, basically? What's going to happen in the northern Israeli border and with Lebanon?
Yeah. I think that by now the attention should be focused on Lebanon and what might happen there. In Lebanon, there is a Shia organization which is called Hezbollah. There was no Hezbollah before Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. When I, as a young officer, joined the Israeli forces and entered Lebanon in 1982, the villages in South Lebanon accepted us. They were very happy for us to come. These are the bases of Hezbollah now, southern Lebanon. And the Israeli invasion of 1982 triggered Hezbollah. It was born because and as a result of the Israeli invasion, and now it is part of the Lebanese government. And therefore, Michele, when and if war starts between in northern Israel, it will not be war between Israel and Hezbollah. It will be war between Israel and Lebanon, because Hezbollah is now part of the government there. Now, Hezbollah started shooting at Israel when Israel attacked Gaza. And it said that it will continue to shoot and fight Israel as long as Israel fights in Gaza. So if, in theory, Israel stops the war in Gaza, there should be quiet in the north. So hopefully the Israelis will end the war there soon, which in theory should prevent war between Israel and Lebanon in the north. Now, if war starts, it will be a terrible war.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am in a hotel, and the connection went down for a moment.
Sure.
It doesn't seem preventable. Is Hezbollah that wants to, in your evaluation, what is the gain for Hezbollah to bring Israel into a war? Obviously, it could be dramatic for Israel. It could be difficult, but this will probably turn southern Lebanon and the Shiite area that Hezbollah controls mostly and has its power base into a second Gaza, I would expect. Given the Israeli reaction to the Houthi attack in Yemen, I'm not expecting the IDF to go nicely into southern Lebanon. So what's the strategic advantage other than supposedly serving the interest of Iran?
Well, Hezbollah, when it joined the war, when it attacked Israel following the Israeli attack on Hezbollah, said that it will only do it to protect the Palestinians. So they say, to protect the Palestinians. And they promised that they will stop if Israel stopped the war in Gaza. I don't know if they will stop. We will have to test them. Now, if war, first of all, I'm sure that the parties today, Netanyahu is in Washington and he will meet with Joe Biden. And on the agenda, one of the issues will be Lebanon/Israel/Hezbollah. And I'm sure that Biden will say to Netanyahu, you stop the war in Gaza, and then we, the Americans, will use diplomacy to try and calm down the situation in the north. So maybe diplomacy could work. And what they could do in diplomacy is the following. Israel, through the Americans, will ask Hezbollah to move back, to pull out of the border, because at the moment, Hezbollah is sitting physically on the border with Lebanon. They can look into the houses, into the sitting rooms, into the living rooms on the Israeli side of the border. All the Israeli citizens from northern Israel, I'm talking about 60, 70,000 Israelis, are not there anymore. They are in hotels inside Israel. They had to leave because of the attacks coming from Hezbollah. So what Biden will tell Netanyahu today is, you stop the war in Gaza and get your hostages back, those who are still alive. And then we, the Americans, will use diplomacy to try convince Hezbollah to move back, pull back from the border, about 10 miles or 15 kilometers. In return, you, Israel, will negotiate with Lebanon the border between you, where there are a few disagreements. Hopefully this diplomacy will work. I believe that parallel to these diplomatic attempts, which Biden will lead through his envoy, someone by the name of Hochstein, parallel to these, the Israelis will move their forces from Gaza to Lebanon, to North Israel, sorry, not to Lebanon, to put pressure on Hezbollah. To North Israel, to put pressure on Hezbollah. So,
let me stop you there. I understand the hope, but obviously Israel is never going to move, not in the short term, where short term I mean at least a year or two, its forces from Gaza, because it's apparent from the situation, the continuing fighting, and even the presence still of hostages in Hamas hands, even if, well, hopefully some of them are alive. But anyhow, the fact that forms of resistance and an act of rebellion against the Israeli presence is re-emerging in northern Gaza, that if they leave Gaza, well, apart from leaving us behind destruction, they also leave, as everybody, you included, when we spoke, what was it, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, expected, leaving in Hamas certainly much weaker, but not demolished. And so this would be for Netanyahu saying, I'm basically withdrawing without achieving what I have claimed for 9 months to be my goal.
That's a very good point. The Israelis, when they started, they said we want to achieve two objectives. One, to destroy Hamas, to topple Hamas, and number two, to release the hostages. By now, what we are 9.5 months still the beginning of the war, these two objectives are not achieved. And it is unlikely that Hamas will be toppled anyway, and the hostages will only be released by diplomacy. That's the bottom line. Now, there is a deal now which is ready to be signed. Hamas, you are absolutely right, Michele, it is still there and it will continue to be there. and Hamas is now battered, not in a good place, but they are still there, and they are willing to sign the dotted line. Netanyahu is not willing to do that. Netanyahu is refusing to do it. And today, when Biden meets with Netanyahu, and when Harris meets with Netanyahu later today, and when Trump will meet with him on Friday, tomorrow, they will all tell Netanyahu, you've got to stop the war. All of them. All of them will tell him the same thing. And Netanyahu, at a certain stage, will have to accept the deal, to sign it. It's just a matter of time. I believe that he's waiting for the parliament recess, to the Knesset recess, which will start next week and will go on for 3 months, because during the recess, his partners cannot get rid of him because the Knesset is not meeting. But let me go back to the point. When Israel signed the deal to release the hostages, the war will stop. This will be the deal. You, Israel, stop the war, and we give you some of the hostages, some of them, not all of them. And then we will continue to negotiate. So the hope is, I just finished this point, Michele, the bottom line is that the signing of the hostage deal will end, at least temporarily, the war in Gaza, and hopefully Hezbollah will stop shooting. And the Houthis too, in theory, should stop shooting. Everyone should stop shooting, because everyone is saying, Houthis, Hezbollah, Shia group in Iraq, all of them are saying, we are firing at you, Israel, because you are firing at Gaza. So the key
Do you
point
believe
is,
them?
I don't know. That's a good point. That's a good point. You know, Hezbollah, which came to power in 1982, said to Israel, you get out of Lebanon. Israel was in Lebanon from 1982 to 2000. 1982, 2000, 18 years. During these years, Hezbollah used to say to the Israelis, in speeches, in announcements, you get out, we stop firing at you, because we are firing at you only because you are inside Lebanon. Israel, under Prime Minister Ehud Barak, withdrew from Lebanon on the 24th of May 2000, and guess what? Hezbollah continued to challenge. So I don't know. In theory, they should stop. If they do not stop, if they insist on continuing firing at Israel, after Israel stopped fighting in Lebanon, then Israel will have the legitimacy, the international support to attack Lebanon. But so I don't know. You might right in what you are hinting
No,
at.
I'm just very much confused. I mean, I see a landscape of destruction, of continuous fighting. I see the Israeli government, how can I say, oscillating between sending a signal, oh my God, they're all attacking us, we have to do something. That's one extreme, and the other is we're going to kick everybody else's butt because we're the strongest, so just do what we say. And then, in fact, as the, how can I say, signaling that they believe this by proposing and then having approved this idea that there cannot be Palestinian states, no matter how small or where it is, as long as it is near us, because it's a threat to our survival. And so it seems all very strange. the Hezbollah obviously and the Yemeniti are clearly dependent on Iran. This would suggest that there is a Iranian strategy to keeping tension on Israel until Israel makes some other big mistake. But what could it be? I mean, what are if I try to ask you, what do you think the players believe to be the outcome of this? I mean, well, if you have to play game theory with these guys, how do you see the continuation game, and what do you think their aims are? Because the
You
only
see,
way I can read the aims is continuous tension and reciprocal fighting. On Israeli side, the view that we make incremental territorial gains and eventually will get from the sea
the,
to the river the country, and the other thinking, well, we're going to ruin your life forever until something major happens. But that's the only strategy I see.
I think that you answered the question yourself, yeah. Because number one, Iran is behind it. Of course, we know that Iran is behind it, and the aim is war of attrition or attrition war against Israel. And the enemies now recognize a weakness on the Israeli side. They recognize a weakness. And look, Israel at the moment is fighting on 6 fronts. 6 fronts. Gaza is the main one. A West Bank, where there is an ongoing, a conflict there between Israelis and Palestinians. Hezbollah in Lebanon. Houthis who are firing from Yemen. Groups firing at Israel from Iraq, and groups firing at Israel from Syria. So 6 fronts at the same time, and they do it because they can see weakness there, and there is a weakness there. Hamas, Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, hoped that when he attacks Israel, others will join. Yes, they joined. Not in a big war, but in an attrition war. And therefore, I think the aim is to do war of attrition against Israel. And the truth is, going back to Hezbollah in Lebanon, Israel needs a break. Israel needs a break urgently. There are soldiers, there are troops who are fighting there for more than 250 days. 250 days. And I'm not talking about the regular troops. I'm going about civilians like you and me, who on the 7th of October put on uniforms, grab their rifle, and join the war. And they are there for 250 days. So, and the equipment needs replacement. So Israel needs a break.
So my question was, Israel needs a break. Yes, everybody needs a break, but a break to what? Because I think the players must be asking, right? All right, we'll take a break, which is, I think, being down under or underground. The question in all these diplomatic efforts or pseudo diplomatic efforts or arm twisting since November in trying to get some kind of lasting truce in Gaza, which was on Hamas part, well, we want a truce that lasts forever. And Israel was, no, we want a truce, so you give us back the hostages, but it won't last forever. Once we get the hostages, we're going to start again. So the poor hostages, for what it's worth, are going to be there for a while. And there is obviously absolutely zero reciprocal trust. And I also wonder why the international mediators play a role, because it doesn't seem to me that they really have this super influence on the players, especially the United States. I mean, the United States could have super influence, but it would require an action that is completely out of question. That is, tell Israel, well, you're on your own, goodbye. That's obviously out of question.
I want to refer to the first part of your question, Michele, about the rest, and then we'll come to the second part. The Israelis need a real rest because they are fighting for so long, and they are not used to fight for so long. The entire Israeli doctrine of warfare is all about short wars.
Yes, but this is the longest war by far.
Yeah. So think about think about 6 to 7 6-day war, which went on for 5.5, 6 days, where Israel occupied the Sinai, the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, Jerusalem, the West Bank. 6 days. Now the war is going on for 9.5 months. So the Israelis don't have the troops to do that. They cut the number of troops and tanks in recent years because they thought that big wars are over. So they need to let the troops rest, you see, and they need to reorganize themselves. They need to look after the machines. They need to find a solution to the drones coming from Hezbollah is using. You know, there is a new machine, a primitive machine, which is a drone. And it's penetrating Israel from all directions. And the Israelis have no respond to it. So they have to find a technological solution to the problem. And therefore they need a rest, they need a break, they need a hostage deal which will bring a ceasefire, a long ceasefire. And in the meantime, they will organize themselves.
And then? That's the question. I mean, so it seems to me that Israel, in the moment in which the Knesset said, we don't want another state, they are actually saying, we're ready to fight forever in this continuous war, in which it's unclear if the other parts has any limit, because the other part has, in some sense, lots of factors, among them religion and time, playing for it. I mean, the statement that cannot be a Palestinian state is a statement of saying, let's go on forever.
Yeah, no, look, that's very interesting, and it links us to the situation in the United States now, and the meeting today between Netanyahu and Biden, because Biden is not going to be the next president of the United States, but he got, about 6 months to try and achieve something, especially in the Middle East. And his hope, Biden's hope, is that he will manage to build some structure whereby Saudi Arabia and Israel sign something, and there is, if not full peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, at least a roadmap for peace. Now, a key element in this roadmap is for Israel, for Netanyahu to say, I'm willing to have a Palestinian state in the future. Even to say it in a vague way, even not to say it, as clearly as I just spelled it out. But this is Biden's mission, I believe, before he leaves the White House, to create this structure.
He's never going to achieve it. Let me be frank. He's never going to achieve it. Come on, you don't believe it yourself.
Well, this is what they're going to discuss today in the White House, because for Israel, look, Michele, for Israel, the incentive is a deal with Saudi Arabia and the United States and other countries like Bahrain and Morocco. And this is the group of states confronting Iran. That's the point. So it's a massive incentive for Israel. But in order for it to happen, someone, that's Netanyahu, must say something, few words, a general statement that in principle he agrees to have a Palestinian state in the future.
You're a very fine game theorist, but you're telling me right now that all this fuss about the vote and blah is a bargaining chip?
Look, the real danger to Israel, Michel, the real danger to Israel, the real one is Iran. Iran, in a few weeks' time, might declare, we've got the bomb, the atomic bomb, not just a little bomb.
Why in a few weeks' time? All of a sudden?
I think that they are very close to it, Michel. They are very close to it. You see, Netanyahu, this same Netanyahu, appeared before the Congress yesterday, and they gave a brilliant speech. And he appeared before the Congress a few years ago and gave a brilliant speech. In his previous brilliant speech, he managed to convince the United States, which was led by Trump, to abandon the nuclear deal which was signed with Iran, which will slow down the Iranian advancement in the direction of an atomic bomb. Netanyahu managed to convince everyone to pull out of this deal. And guess what? Iran felt free, and now maybe they've already got it. I don't know. Maybe they got the bomb. Maybe they're just waiting for an opportunity to announce it. And they are so close to it that they can come out in a few weeks' time and say, we are an atomic bomb. We are an atomic, we've got the atomic bomb. We've got the bomb. Of course, it will take them time to fit it on the missiles which will have to carry it, because you need a platform. You can't just have the bomb. You can't put it in your suitcase. The bottom line, what I'm trying to say, that Israel's real enemy is Iran. Iran organizes everything in the Middle East. And therefore, a deal whereby Israel and moderate Arab countries, mainly Sunni countries, come together is a big incentive for Israel. But for that, they will have to say something about the Palestinians, because nobody will sign with Israel.
Right. No, I agree on that. I mean, that there is I agree that the Saudi Arabian at the end, they have their Arab peace plan on the table, God knows since. You probably remember the date when it was first issued. But it's been sitting there and nobody gives a damn about it. I don't think Israeli. So it's. I mean, your answer is very sophisticated, but I wonder if your answer is more realism or hope.
No. Well, I'm very. You see, Michel. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall today in the White House when Netanyahu meets with Biden, and I would ideally like to be connected. And I would like and to be connected to you, Michel, and to report to you what they're talking about. Now, let me tell you what on the agenda, in my opinion. On the agenda is end of war, Gaza war, diplomacy to end the tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, and creating a regional deal whereby Israel and Saudi Arabia sign something and Netanyahu says something. This is the agenda today, in my opinion.
Professor Bregman, let me be frank. I think this is your wish, more your wishful thinking than yeah. Let me tell you why. Because these interact in a certain way. Forget about even Netanyahu, internal Israeli politics, which I understand a little bit, but very little, infinitesimal compared to you, and the sense, therefore, of this move of having the vote say we don't want a Palestinian state. There is American policy in this, in American politics. A deal of that kind, even in a month, even in two, even more in October, the October surprise, would be such a bonus for Biden and Harris and such a gift to Biden against in the tentative of beating Trump, that one wonder why Netanyahu would want to do it. Only Netanyahu, the only thing he has to do is to hedge and wait. If in November Trump wins, he has a clear path to another approach, which is a much tougher, much more violent, much more bellicose approach, in which he can actually hope that Trump may throw in its weight by blackmailing the Saudi Arabia and saying, listen, either you cut a deal with Israel even without the Palestinian state, or you will have to handle Iran and the Yemen attack by yourself because our weapons will not be coming. They'll be going to Israel only. So if Trump wins, Netanyahu is, I think, in a very strong bargaining position or keeping the strategy of total conquer. If he loses, he can go back in January next year or February next year to Harris, or at this point to Harris, and say, okay, fine, let's cut a deal. Why should he do it now? He has no incentive to do it now.
Well, your assumption, Michele, and maybe Netanyahu's assumption, is that Trump is in Israel's pocket. He's not. He's very, as you know, probably better than me, he's very unpredictable, and he's a very transactional president.
True, but I think is this profound dislike of Muslim is sincere.
I don't know about Trump. Trump is very unpredictable because he's going to see Netanyahu tomorrow. He already said to Netanyahu, number one, you have to stop the war. And number two, you have to do something about PR, because the public relations of Israel is very bad. That's what Trump is saying, not Harris. You see? So I'm not sure that Trump is in the Israeli pocket because he is so transactional. But look, I think that Biden is the last Zionist. He is the last Zionist. He is the last one. There is never in the future, well, never is a long time, but I think that America is changing and Israel is changing, and America is disengaging from Israel. So I believe, and there are many people, it's a school of thought. It's not Ahron Bregman believes. I believe.
You believe that America is disengaging from Israel?
Sorry, say again. Can you repeat?
You truly believe America is disengaging from Israel?
America?
That's the trend you see?
Yeah, that's a trend. Absolutely. Biden belongs to a generation of leaders who felt very emotional about Israel. He worked with Israeli Prime Minister, with Golda Meir in 1973, with Rabin, with all of them. And he defines himself as the last Zionist. And in the future, because of the changes in these two countries, especially in Israel, because Israel becomes Israel regards itself as Jewish democracy, but it is more Jewish than a democracy, and the values are not the same values anymore. And the next generation of American presidents in a decade or two, They will come from the Ivy universities where, now they demonstrate against the Gaza war. They will not feel this strong connection that Biden felt vis-a-vis Israel. So times are changing, and this is a trend. And therefore, I think that there is an opportunity for Israel now, as long as Biden is there, and Biden is desperate to have an achievement, to leave a legacy. And that's the opportunity. And this is what I'm telling you now, is what Biden is going to say to Netanyahu today. Grab it before it is too late. Yeah. So that's the situation.
Well, you have an optimistic view. You're a very optimistic view, very much more optimistic than the one I have made up in my mind. Let's see. So you believe that there is some... No, go ahead.
I just got the beginning. Can you repeat, Michele, because I couldn't hear you?
No, I was just saying you seem to have a very optimistic view, a more optimistic view that I've been able to, how can I say, build up in my mind during the last year.
No. Look, it is not easy for Netanyahu to say or to hint that he's willing to have a Palestinian state in the future is not easy. He got crazy coalition partners who want the war to continue, who want to topple Hamas, who want to resettle the Gaza Strip. But this is what Biden will tell him today. I'm Biden the last Zionist, and I can give you Iran. I can protect you by bringing you into a coalition with other countries which will confront you. So take this opportunity because it might not repeat. Not going to be easy for Netanyahu to spell out the words. But if he fails to do so, the deal will not work, because it is all dependent on Israel agreeing, and I'm going back to your question, on a two-state solution somewhere in the future. And that's the temptation, for Israel to protect itself from Iran, from the Houthis, from Hezbollah, from all the enemies in the Middle East.
Well, I don't know. I think it's very interesting, and I'm happy to record your view. We'll see. I wish you were right, that there is a room for the Biden administration and overall of the United States to force a credible thing, but it seems to be the forces on the ground are going the other way. But again, we are in the terrain of forecast. So your view is that so in some sense, Hezbollah is playing for Biden by putting pressure on Israel and making it clear that there is another front going to open there, and it's going to keep going. They're reinforcing the credibility. They're giving more credibility to Biden requests. Let's cut a deal, and you stop it. You're going to have the protection, but you'll have to cut a deal.
The key thing is to stop the war in Gaza. That's the key. And the hope, now talking about optimism or pessimism, the hope is that stopping the war in Gaza will stop the war on other fronts. That's the hope. When it comes to the remaining days of the Biden administration, it will regard its role in putting pressure on Israel to stop the war / to do the hostage deal, which will stop the war. Number two, the Biden administration will try to use diplomacy to stop the war, the the possible war with Hezbollah/Lebanon, and number three, the big deal which Biden will try to push through in the near future is to bring Israel and Saudi Arabia together by convincing Netanyahu to agree in principle, just in principle, for a future Palestinian state. And in fact, Netanyahu in the past gave a speech. It is called the Bar Ilan speech. The Bar Ilan speech, where he said that he was in favor of a Palestinian state. So all Netanyahu should do is just to repeat the speech that he gave so many years ago. I can't remember exactly when. And hopefully, Biden will not say, okay, I'm not only that I'm not be the candidate, I'm also going to leave the White House, and all of these plans will collapse, because he might say, maybe he will let Harris, become the president of the United States before the elections. Who knows?
No, I take your analysis. Your analysis has its own coherence, internal coherence. It's just that,
difficult, tough.
It flies in the face of what I perceive to be the reality on the ground. Let me try one more line, and then we wrap it up. Wouldn't this be the end of Netanyahu power in Israel? Or Netanyahu, the Arab phoenix, he will reappear as a kind of new rabbin?
Netanyahu will be remembered as the worst leader in Jewish Israeli history ever. That's Netanyahu.
That's your view, because you're a leftist.
Netanyahu presided, Michele, over the most serious disaster in Israeli.
You don't have to convince me. You don't have to convince me. You understand? In the Jewish community, unfortunately, in Italy, I have become an anti-Semite or anti-Semite. I don't even remember how it's said in English, because I have that opinion of Netanyahu and its policies and its plans. You don't have to convince me. The problem is that the fact you just stated says, how can these same characters turn upside down and do what after he's done that?
It's very true. It's very true. It might be, but he's there. He's there. There's strong pressure. There are demonstrations every day in Israel by people who want him to go. Not only him, Michele. Not only him. He should go, and all the military leadership which led to this disaster should go. All of them should.
Why is that? But let me insist. Then I wanted. We're going a bit long, but I insist because I like the debate. Why then the Center Party voted for the no-Palestinian state motion? Why didn't the Knesset split between a majority, government and the opposition?
You see, Israel, Netanyahu will go at some point, but Israel will stay, and the Israel which we have now is a very right-wing religious country or nation. That's Israel. And I think that most Israelis are in fact against the Palestinian state now, because what happened in Gaza on the 7th of October seems to prove to them that a Palestinian state is a dangerous thing. So Israel is a right-wing country now, and very, very religious. And people hope that when Netanyahu goes, everything will become heaven. But no, Israel is not in a good place in the sense that it's not in a good place. It's a very right wing, and all this leadership should go. But about Netanyahu specifically, just one more thing. Netanyahu is the son of a historian. His father was a historian, and for Netanyahu, legacy is really important. And from this point of view, the legacy is going to be very negative, because whatever he says, or whatever he's going to say in his future autobiography, the bottom line is that he was the Israeli prime minister who was there on the 7th of October 2023. Not only that, he created the conditions that enabled Hamas to do what it did on the 7th of October. So it's a terrible legacy. And it's terrible, especially for someone like Netanyahu.
So you think he wants to come out in history, as a father of Israel, as a positive figure, as the one that he's going to try to sell it by saying, I beat Hamas so badly that, you see, eventually I have freed the country of the Hamas threat, and now we can actually cut a deal. That's going to be some way of selling it.
Even when Netanyahu is not there will still be Hamas there. Hamas.
I have no doubt about it. I mean, we've been trying to explain it for 10 months now.
Yeah.
Hamas is not going to go away, unfortunately. No. They created it, and it's there to exist.
The only victory, little victory, that Israel could have is to have the hostages back. Most of them are dead now. Most of them are dead. And I believe that in the future, we will learn that most of the hostages who were taken to Gaza still alive were killed by Israeli fire. This is what I believe. Most of them were killed by
some observers have, I have no actual ground, but I found it pretty miraculous given the level of bombing that actually they would have kept hundreds of plus people alive in that condition. I mean, it's a very difficult operation.
Look, it's not in the interest of Hamas to kill them. It's in the interest of Hamas to kill them, to keep them alive.
No, I understand, but it's also extremely difficult as a military operation. I mean, it's not.
Yes, of course. So to go back to my point, the little victory is to have the hostages back, because there will be a moment in Israel of, and the Israelis will be able to say, yes, we had a disaster, but at least we brought our people back. They were abandoned on the 7th of October 2023 by the military. Don't abandon them again, bring them back. So this is the only victory that Israel could have. Otherwise, it's terrible defeat, if you look at it.
Well, let's hope. Listen, it's very. I think it's in some sense very original. So let's make a note of it. If you don't mind, I will title it a forecast against common wisdom or something like that. And well, let's meet after summer and see how things go, September or so on. Well, Italians, in August, they don't do anything, then they think the war stops. It's not true in the rest of the world. The war keeps going and things happen. So if something dramatic happens, I will bug you again. If not, we'll see how it evolves.
Sure.
Sir,
thank you very much.
Very kind. Very stimulating. Thanks for your thoughts. Have a good evening, Ahron.
All the best. Bye-bye.